Hello and welcome to Camp Xbox. As a child, I vividly remember gazing at the shelf at a local game store and spotting State of Emergency for the Xbox. A game with a massive character, flames, and a riot in the background. It seemed like everything I wasn't allowed to play at my young age, and that held true until recently. Join me as we explore its history, and I'll share my thoughts on this hyper-violent title. Thanks to YouTube channel member Brig for the recommendation, as well as Potatoes for Tots. Let's dive into State of Emergency. State of Emergency is a beat-em-up style game developed by Viz Entertainment and published by Rockstar Games. Originally released for the PS2 in February 2002, it later made its way to the Xbox a year later on March 25, 2003, and the PC shortly after. In the early 2000s, Rockstar Games had already established themselves as a powerhouse in the video game publishing industry, having produced the first two Grand Theft Autos in the late 90s. They were known for highly controversial, yet quality and fun violent games. By the year 2001, they had many great games outside of Grand Theft Auto, such as Oni and Midnight Club. However, with the release of Grand Theft Auto 3, they solidified their position as one of the most talked about gaming companies of the 6th generation. Even before Grand Theft Auto 3, State of Emergency had been discussed by various gaming outlets when it was showcased at gaming trade shows. It was hyped up for many reasons, fitting a GTA action archetype and being a Rockstar game, promising a good time. In an early interview about the game with GameSpot, Rockstar emphasized the game's AI and the depiction of hundreds of people running in the streets, looting, and breaking everything. It was a riot simulation that seemed interesting and daring. This concept later led to false rumors that the game would have a censored and uncensored release, but these claims were never true. The game received somewhat positive reviews upon its hyped PS2 release in 2002. Many outlets appreciated the arcade-style gameplay with its budget price. It was deemed worthwhile. However, there were some negative reviews mentioning that the replay value was lacking. Building on that positive reception though, after a year of work, State of Emergency was ported to the Xbox, promising new features and stronger animations. Having recently played this game for the first time, let's see if it lives up to the hype that lingered in my head since childhood. State of Emergency unfolds in an alternate reality of the United States, where the corporation has seized control, abolishing elections and establishing itself as the supreme leader, governing every aspect of life. After many years of their dominion, you assume the role of one of 5 characters, each recruited by the rebellion force Freedom. Their objective is to incite mass riots and overthrow the oppressive government. The plot is dark and grim, revolving around controversial themes of organizing violent uprisings against the government, possibly reflecting on the censorship debate surrounding video games around that era. The narrative is delivered with Rockstar's signature sly wit, juxtaposed with loudspeakers blaring government propaganda amidst the chaos. However, the story serves primarily as a backdrop for the gameplay, acting as a tool to facilitate the riot technology. The game features 2 main modes, Chaos and Revolution. While Chaos lacks a narrative, Revolution offers missions with accompanying text boxes. Unfortunately, these missions often boil down to tasks like eliminating or protecting specific targets, lacking depth or intrigue. The story is not the focal point here, gameplay takes precedence. Yet the lack of a compelling plotline and cutscenes gives little drive. The concept is entertaining, but the execution just falls short, with uninteresting text guiding you through these quests that serve as a means to an end. Despite the narrative drawback, the gameplay remains the key focus, and the fun factor could compensate for the narrative shortcomings. This game immerses you in the classic 3D beat-em-up experience. You take command of your character with simple button presses, delivering blows to enemies along the way. Weapons may be discovered, allowing you to pick them up and unleash mayhem with the press of the A button. Breaking windows, demolishing buildings, and wreaking havoc across the 4 levels offers a tight and satisfying control experience. Initially, the shooting may feel a bit off, but as you become accustomed to its simplicity, everything clicks together. The core concept is undeniably enjoyable. Roaming these levels, teaming with people, engaged in looting and running creates a genuinely chaotic and entertaining atmosphere. The game doesn't shy away from extreme violence, aligning with Rockstar's trend of pushing video game themes to their absolute limits. Now let's delve into the standout mode, Chaos Mode. Across the 4 distinct levels, your objective is clear. Get a high score by beating up police, breaking things, or following the game's missions. You are thrust into this chaotic mess, immersing yourself in the action with a limited time to cause as much mayhem as possible. Everything from breaking windows to knocking out pedestrians contributes to your point total. Random bonuses pop up and add a little bit of spice to the gameplay, directing your focus to specific riot actions. The quick-paced, high-score pursuit is a blast, and unlocking more game modes with each level, you get things such as 200 clone mode where you have to kill 200 of the same character. It enhances the overall enjoyment of the game. However, a significant drawback surfaces due to the lack of levels. The brevity becomes apparent, as completing all 4 levels for high scores can be achieved in an hour or 2. Leaving the overall content feeling staggeringly light. More unlockables or a structured arcade mode could have mitigated this issue. Despite its brevity, Chaos Mode remains entertaining, but it inevitably directs players towards Revolution Mode. Revolution Mode is the game's story-driven mode where you follow a freedom leader and you go through various missions. These tasks typically involve destroying buildings, protecting gang members, or eliminating specific executives. Unfortunately, the missions lack any variety and flair. It becomes repetitive and tiresome with each mission. The game overstays its welcome in small, similar environments, making the extended duration of each of the 4 levels tedious. Despite a promising start, the shallowness of the experience becomes noticeable when the execution just falls so short. The Xbox version gains some new features, but with an additional year of development time, the lack of an extra level or a major fix to the missions is disappointing. Revolution Mode is an attempt to lengthen the game, but it results in the game feeling repetitive and uninteresting, and it quickly becomes grating. It's unfortunate that such a cool idea can be squandered so quickly, considering the initial fun and spot-on gameplay. The Xbox version introduces multiplayer, which is a substantial positive for the game. Most games benefit from the ability to play with others, especially one with a fun core like this. Multiplayer offers various game modes where you can aim to gain the highest score, eliminate as many opponents as possible, or just stay alive the longest. Whether in co-op or versus mode, accommodating up to 4 players, the multiplayer aspect injects fun into the game. The modes are quick and easy to pick up, enhancing the overall experience. I often see people have fond memories of the multiplayer in the Xbox version, and I think that's where the most significant impact comes from. State of Emergency adopts a cartoony aesthetic that, in my opinion, complements the game's various aspects. Characters sport exaggerated features with vibrant environments, offering a nice contrast to the dark themes and providing a lighter take on the subject matter. While the visuals appear solid, they may not reach incredible heights. However, the true power of the graphics becomes evident when considering the sheer amount of activity on the screen. Back then, it was a marvel, and even today, the bustling crowds of NPCs looting and screaming create absolute chaos. The game's ability to handle such a huge environment with consistently stable frame rates is impressive, and it makes it an excellent tech demo for managing a multitude of on-screen elements at one time. The graphic violence, if you're into that, is well animated. The bright reds and dark animations contribute to a visceral experience. I did play a bit of the PS2 version because Rockstar claimed the animations would be better on Xbox, and I honestly didn't see a significant difference aside from just slightly crisper graphics. The main reason I would say to get it over the PS2 version is the implementation of the multiplayer, as well as the ability to use your own custom soundtracks. Overall, it's a visually pleasing game with a robust engine supporting its aesthetic. The audio in State of Emergency excels at complementing its chaotic aesthetic. The cacophony of screams, yells, and explosions permeates the game, contributing to an overall sense of chaos. Surprisingly, this audio barrage never becomes tiresome and effectively enhances the game's background. The sounds of explosions are well crafted, and it further heightens a surprisingly good soundtrack. The soundtrack predominantly features drum and bass and adds a delightful kick to the game. Although it's slightly overshadowed by the loud crowds, it's excellent as background music. Notably, using your own music burned onto the Xbox hard drive is my favorite choice, and it allows you to wreak havoc while jamming to your favorite songs. Overall, State of Emergency has its positives. It has a solid core gameplay that's easy to pick up, coupled with a fun arcade mode. The cartoonish aesthetic is pleasing and the audio is well crafted. Unfortunately, the game falls short in terms of content, and what is available becomes repetitive quickly. The arcade mode serves as a great foundation, but there's a lack of depth to keep players engaged. And the Revolution mode feels stretched to its limits, becoming tiresome. A more developed arcade mode with additional levels would have been a significant improvement. While there's enjoyment to be had initially, the game's thin content becomes evident rather fast. The addition of multiplayer enhances the fun factor, but it's not enough to elevate it to the status of a great game. Despite having its fans, State of Emergency did not live up to my expectations, and I cannot wholeheartedly recommend it. If you enjoyed this game though, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Everyone's opinion is valuable, and I'm eager to hear from you. Out of the original Xbox games I've covered on this channel, I'm gonna rank State of Emergency at 58 out of 65. While I would prefer playing Tao Feng's multiplayer over this one, it's a game I'd rather spend time on than Arctic Thunder. I mentioned earlier that State of Emergency was generally well received with its PS2 debut, with some people pointing out negatives. However, the Xbox version received a more mixed reaction. Some reviewers remained positive, but others such as GameSpot and IGN lowered their scores from the PS2 version. GameSpot went from an 8.5 to a 7.8. IGN went from an 8.3 to a 6.6, and Official Xbox Magazine gave it a 6.5 out of 10. This shift in scores could be attributed to a couple of factors. Firstly, the gameplay seems to have an off and on appeal. It's fun initially, but loses its enjoyment over time, and maybe the initial fun of the PS2 version had waned a year later. Secondly, the upgrade from the PS2 version to the Xbox version wasn't as significant as expected, with OXM saying that they couldn't believe this took a year to get ported. While State of Emergency has an arcade flair and solid multiplayer, it doesn't seem to have the best reputation. Popular video game review sites like Backlogged and Glitchwave give it an average score of 2.2 out of 5 and 2.12 out of 5 respectively. Even though it does have its fans, it's not a very well thought of Rockstar game nowadays, and I can understand why. But that wraps it up for today. If you've played State of Emergency, whether you enjoyed it or you had a different opinion, feel free to share in the comments below. Be sure to like if you enjoyed this review, as it helps me out in the algorithm, subscribe to stay updated on all things retro Xbox, and a special shout out to my YouTube channel members. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you here next time at Camp Xbox.